All right, another edition of a better NFL Top 100. I started this actually 3 years ago, or I guess 2 years ago, but this is my third straight year doing it. The first time I did it, it was kind of a bit of a mess. I had to rework the structure of how I was doing it midway through. But I landed on this structure last year, and so I'm going to do it again this year. But before I get into the list, I want to kind of just explain what this is, what you're going to be seeing each day at 2 o'clock Eastern for the next 10 days. Unless there's a podcast, I will be posting one of these each day. Essentially, the way it works is I'm going to be counting down from 100 to 1 who I consider to be the best 100 players. So each video will have 10 players, and I wanted to explain my criteria and my reasoning for this list as well. My criteria for how I'm choosing players is I'm trying my best to take positional value out of the equation. Obviously, it's still going to factor in, just how can it not? I do have more quarterbacks than I probably would have if I was truly not counting positional value. I have only a couple of special teams guys that would have more, all that stuff. But that's my main goal, is to kind of take out positional value as much as possible. The reason why I'm doing this list is, I think it's just fun. Lists are fun. It creates discussion. It creates back and forth, which is always entertaining. The other reason is I hope to some degree I can maybe shed some light on players who don't always get the credit that they deserve. And hopefully in doing this, that can, I can give a shout out to some players to maybe deserve more credit than they get. So, that's my logic behind doing this, why I want to do it, why I think it's fun. So, without further ado, let's just get into the one last thing I wanted to say. The reason why it's called a better NFL Top 100 is because, of course, if you're unaware, the NFL YouTube channel posts a Top 100 every year, and they're often usually heavily criticized. And a lot of times the lists aren't very good. So my goal is to just make a better version of the list. Not saying it's a perfect list or anything like that, and I'm not saying that there's like my list is the right way. Just trying to make it, one step above. We'll see if I can do that. But now let's get into the list. Number 100, I did end up going Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith makes the list. I wasn't sure if he was going to, but, I've been kind of pounding the table for a while that I think he's a really underrated player. I think, because TJ Watt is across from him, he doesn't get the attention he deserves, and maybe people feel as though he's just a product of that situation. Listen, the situation helps, but we've seen him still have some really impressive reps, have a high percentage of wins, even when he is getting enough attention. Like, I think he's a really good player. So, even with the criticisms you could throw at him, I think he's worthy of a spot on the top 100. Number 99, I went Nico Collins, another player who, we're going to see throughout this list, it's kind of hard to figure out how exactly you want to put certain players on the list. Because for someone like Nico Collins, he was easily a top 100 guy last year. The thing is, he's only had 1 year of really being that guy. So how much do you value that? How much do you value just the, how many years you have? I value that at least to some degree. I think it did knock him that he only has the 1 year, but that 1 year was really good. Again, he has to be on the list. Number 98, I did go Dak Prescott. Again, every quarterback I pick, people are going to say they're too low just because that's how it works, is people don't, again, I say I'm not taking positional value into account, and people will still say, yeah, but, my favorite quarterback should be number 5. It's like, well, that would mean that they're like one of the best quarterback, like the best quarterback in football, basically. Prescott was an MVP candidate last year, but I didn't think, I don't know. I've always been lower on Prescott than other people are. There's a lot to like about Prescott's game. He is a good game manager who will give you stuff after the play. I do think it's fair to start looking at some playoff performances at this point in big game moments. I do also think some stats got inflated by, playing against bad defenses last year. I do. That being said, there's still a ton to like about him. I still did put him on the list because of, like I said, he is a good game manager. He will give you stuff after a play breaks down. But yeah, there are critiques I have with him, and mostly I just think he's a good quarterback, not an elite one, which is still, it's a compliment putting you on the list, even if for quarterbacks, people always view it as an insult that you're not higher. Number 97, I went with DeMarcus Lawrence. Again, kind of similar to Alex Highsmith, doesn't always get the credit he deserves because he's across from another really good pass rusher. You have Micah Parsons, who, when I did my top 10 edge rushers list, I actually left Lawrence off the list. I have since swapped him and Highsmith, but they're both really good. I think he's, you look at his box score numbers or even his advanced numbers, they're all very good. So I think he deserves a spot on the list. Number 96, I guess part of a trend of this section of the video is guys who maybe get overlooked due to playing a position, being the second best at their position on their team, even though they're still really good. Because obviously Tyreek Hill is going to get the credit at the wide receiver position. But again, Waddle is a really good player. I don't think Waddle had his best year last year, but I still think he is at his best. I think last year I put him as a top 10 wide receiver. I don't think he's that far behind even this year. I think he's really good. So again, maybe doesn't always get the credit, but is a very good player. Number 95, another edge rusher. 3 edge rushers make this section of the list. A guy who, I think people have kind of forgotten. He's actually been really good these past couple years. I guess not forgotten, but not fully realized how good he has been as of late. It was kind of thing where he was a pretty solid, 10 sack guy. We get who he is. And I think people just kind of said, okay, got it. That's who you are, and moved on. But he's really emerged to be more than that. He's really emerged to be kind of I don't want to say elite, but just a great number 1 edge rusher for Cincinnati. So because of that, that's why I have him on the list. 94, Breece Hall does make the list. I was a little curious as to how do I put him on the list? Do I put him on the list? Because obviously the injury stuff is that matters. You have to factor that in. But when he's on the field, I just feel like he's so good. If we're saying just one healthy, I think he's much better than 94. It just you do have to stay on the field. You do have to get the reps to get too much higher. But I still decided to put him on the list because of what we've seen positives with him when he is on the field. Number 93, I'm going Tua. Tua makes my list as well. I'm sure Dolphins fans will not be thrilled with this placement. It's interesting. When I did Kyle and I did the podcast, when we did the top quarterbacks list, a lot of people felt like I was too high on Tua. I think Tua's very good. I think that he, gets rid of the ball very quickly in a good way. He throws with anticipation, and he's able to not just run an offense, but he is in many ways what the offense is run through. I think that people don't fully realize that with Tua, and I do think he gives you more when a play breaks down. The end of the season stuff is becoming a real thing. And that is something you have to factor in. In fact, when I did that podcast, I put Tua above a certain player. On this list, I have since switched that. There is a quarterback who I now have higher than Tua because of the kind of end of season stuff. But there still is so much good of Tua. He belongs on this list, in my opinion. He just does. Number 92 is Justin Madubuike, who, again, I'm sure Ravens fans will think is higher. I mean, okay, everyone from that fan base is going to assume that, going to feel their players should be higher. But just in general, for Madubuike, he's someone who I really like. I thought he was great last year, actually. And again, another guy similar to Nico Collins. If Madubuike just comes in and plays as well as he did last year, this next year, he's much higher on the list. It's a bit of a 1-year wonder thing. And his underlying numbers were also good. So I don't think it's one of those situations where, sometimes you have one of those situations where it's a guy who has 10 sacks, but then you look at their underlying numbers and it's okay, what happened here? And then you watch the tape and 7 of those sacks were cleanup sacks. And it's okay, now I understand. That's not the case of Madubuike. He was really good. I just want to see it more. And finally, what will undoubtedly be my most controversial take on maybe this entire top 100 list. Again, quarterback positional value, I'm not taking into account. So it's simply just if he played wide receiver and was this good as a wide receiver, would he be on this list? And I think 91 feels fair. He's the player who I said on my original quarterback list I had behind Tua. I think in hindsight I should put him above. I think I agree with when people disagreed with that, because there is so much good that you get with Jared Goff. I mean, being able to run the offense at a really high level maybe doesn't give you as much when a play breaks down as these other players do, but he makes up for it with, I think, just his consistency in being a game manager, and I don't mean that in an insulting way whatsoever. Also, yes, still is that Super Bowl, and I'm always gonna think about, probably, unless he wins the Super Bowl. I feel like he really has kind of taken that part out of his game. He doesn't really have those meltdowns the way he used to with the Rams, and it's probably coming off of I think just straight up, he's coming off of his best season. He is a guy, due to the situation, his box score stats are going to always be better than, I think, not always better, but last year I think his box score stats were a little better than maybe how good he was, just because he was in a good situation. So I'm sure some Lions fans will post his passer rating, post his passing yards. I know, I'm aware of that stuff, but I get my evaluation by watching this film. I do think there are still some things I would like to see from him when a play breaks down, things like that you just don't get with Goff, but there still is enough upside. I think 91 on the list feels fair. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this section of the list. I will be back tomorrow, 2 Eastern, posting the next 10 picks. So let me know what you think of these 10 picks in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.